All right, we're live. Welcome, Frank. How are you?
Good. How you doing, Ru?
Good. I'm pumped to be here. This is we'll let folks kind of stream in here. And while that's going on, I will ask you the question of the day, which is what is your favorite place you've ever visited?
Oh my. I used to love going to Seattle. I did a lot of domestic travel. I've been to every state but 5 so far. And Seattle, I love being on the ocean. I love the food. I love the kind of connection to nature. And then probably about 10 years ago, I discovered Portland, Maine, which being from Philadelphia is a lot closer than Seattle
Yeah.
and gives me a similar experience. So like Portland, Maine's kind of my happy place, my go-to city.
Yeah. Love it. All right, for those folks joining in, drop the favorite place you've ever visited into the chat, and then we're going to kick it off here with Frank Shultz. Um, Well, awesome, Frank. It's good to be here with you. We're going to do quick intro, and then we'll just kind of go through your background and just kind of kick it. So with that, for folks that are joining up on the line, I've got Frank Shultz. He's the CEO and the founder of Infinite Blue. They're the leading provider of enterprise resilience solutions. And before founding Infinite Blue, Frank worked as both a sales engineer and a product manager role at both startups and established companies. So I'm super excited about this one, Frank, because you've got the background of a lot of the folks that are going to be attending this. Despite doing that, you graduated with a dual major in communications and policy studies. So most of your career has been enabling resilience through technology. So my first question is, how the heck did you find yourself in this career with having that background of comm and policy studies?
No, I love it. It's a great question, and thanks for having me today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I had a chance. I literally did an event yesterday. For those that have been to Philadelphia, there's a really great science museum called the Franklin Institute, and I forgot this until I had a meeting there yesterday morning. A lot of my early drive to just be, I'm a tinkerer. I'm a tech guy. I have a 3D printer over my shoulder. I have, a bunch of just stuff that I play around with, and that curiosity came out of a grandfather who was very tech forward. But then I just jogged my memory yesterday. I was like, oh my God, I remember being at the Franklin Institute as a kid and taking class trips there and just seeing like the early video phones and seeing the early technology pieces and just really loving it and going like, I want to do that. Like, I want to build that. Like today, FaceTime's so prevalent, but back in the day, they had like a sample T1 line between two phones, that probably cost, who knows, thousands of dollars to set up there. And now, like, look at the way technology is advanced. I wanted to do television, so I had done a lot of television work. I went to school nearby in the area here in Norristown High School. We had a cable access channel that we used to do some programming for, and I got to do a lot there, which was really cool in television. Went to Syracuse, wanted to do television, realized as my day job, it might not be as fun. So, if you wanted to do news, you were third shift and maybe kind of a town that someone had barely heard the name of, and you're trying to work your way up either the day shift or a better market for a couple of years. And I'm like, you know what? I don't know if I want to do that. So I picked up policy studies as a second major, and that professor was really pivotal. He actually had me do a lot of tech work to enable his work in his department, both doing his websites, PowerPoints. He hooked me up with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Syracuse. And I was actually their kind of IT manager for a couple of years while I was in college for them. I graduated at the end, right after everyone in policy studies were getting jobs in management consulting for Andersen. And if you're tracking the right time here, kind of 01, 02, Enron hit, Andersen was no more, and people weren't getting jobs. And I graduated in December of 02 and said, what am I going to do? And I took a help desk job for a mortgage software company, and I've been in technology ever since. Fast forward, if anyone's watched the movie The Big Short and is familiar, obviously, with the financial crisis of 07, 08, the company I worked at was the technology piece for all of the major banks that failed writing all the subprime loans that was actually doing the loan processing for them. I was a help desk guy and a QA person, automated QA person at the end there, and it's really interesting to look back and say like, oh, that's why they needed me, because it was really busy writing all those subprime loans in the early 2000s. So I've been in tech ever since. Like I love software. I'm a tinkerer, dangerous enough. But if you ask me like at the heart of who I am, it's a sales engineer and a product manager. Those are the two things that I've really, really enjoyed doing in my career.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah, it's so funny how you'll get some of the like dabble in stuff in college and potentially get there. That's cool. So all right, so you stayed kind of in the area, went up to Cuse. I got yeah, there's some folks that were on. I know KJ's from Cuse. He dropped a comment in last week that was really cool. Edgar, thanks for the comment here. He's talking about the museum. He's been to it that you'd mentioned, Frank. If folks have comments, drop them in. And if you have questions for Frank, drop them in. We've got a CEO and founder here that used to be in all of our shoes here as an SC. So Frank, I'm going to dig into that. But if you do have questions, drop them in the chat. We'll ask Frank that stuff as we go through. Transitioning, how did you find your way into pre-sales then from that first job that you were having?
Yeah, it's a great story. So went from a help desk role to a QA automation role to a project manager role at that first company I worked at in mortgage automation and lending automation. It's really funny. I found myself in a position. I had a girlfriend from college. We had just kind of broken up. I had a house. I hadn't traveled much. I basically went from here to Syracuse to back home. And I said, I really want to travel. And so I was looking for roles. I literally remember being on like Monster and Career Builder and taking that travel dial and going above 50% to say like, what's available above 50%. And my first company had sent me on some kind of chaotic, like, here's an instruction manual. This call center's been down for 2 days. Get on a plane now and show up at 1 a.m. and go fix it. So I kind of was like stress tested to kind of do a lot of those kind of activities. And I saw a job for a company around the corner in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania called Stroll Systems. And it was 80% travel. And it was as a trainer and sales engineer. And I said, well, this is interesting. I wonder if I can do this. And so I remember going in, doing a presentation and really learning kind of what they did in business continuity and disaster recovery. And I still laugh to this day. She hates when I say this. The woman that hired me into that role now works for me in this company, and we've switched, and she's my lead solutions consultant or sales engineer here. And does a phenomenal job. But I'm like, the whole reason the company exists is because you took a chance on me in our space at this point 20 years ago. So it was really cool. But I love when you can put a piece of technology in someone's hands and they smile because it makes their lives easier or better. It's not about the tech. It's about what the tech enables and unlocks. That drives me in anything I do.
That's really cool. I've talked to some other pre-sales leaders that it's that exact thing that you just said that really drives them. They said, one woman, I think Lisa told me, it's when the light bulb moment goes off for the client, like, oh my gosh, this can help me, with my business. And that's the thing. It's just the interest in technology. Some of us have it, some of us don't. It's just what it enables, I think, is huge.
Absolutely.
That was really cool that you mentioned. So it was 80% travel, but it was also teaching and like kind of SC type role. The teaching thing is interesting because I'd love for you to talk about, you do some mentorship, right? With entrepreneurs and that kind of thing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. I think the journey I've been in, so Infinite Blue's been around a little over 10 and a half years. I'd worked for other startups before. I'll tell you, Infinite Blue was a blend of not doing all the things that annoyed me working at startups before this, and doing a lot of the things or unlocking a lot of the things that I either liked or wish we had done at other companies. And so, I do mentor some startups. I try generally to kind of do 2 or 3 startups that I can mentor, and I've done this for the past couple of years. And it's really interesting to try and kind of take a passion someone has and unlock that and build it into a business. I find that passion has to be there first, or kind of, it's either a knowledge or a deep understanding of a space, or a passion that kind of drives them in a space to enable something greater that really works really well. Some of them don't start or don't work because if we try to do something and maybe it's not their passion, or it just is something, it's like, everyone wants to make money, but I found making money is the key driver. A lot of times it's hard to start something because you're more focused on, you're not willing to invest before you kind of pull back something from it. It's all a balance. But mentoring startups is great. I'm mentoring 2 right now, and it's just it's amazing. But my whole thing is, some things we have to go through, the bad things we have to go through sometimes to experience, to learn. It's almost like putting your hand in the fire to say, well, I'll never do that again. Even though my parents told me it was hot, I had to touch it once to know I'll never put my hand back in the fire again. And then there's some things that people will tell you that you're like, yeah, I never want to experience that, and I'm never going to even try to see if it hurts or whatever it is. That's the part that I try to work with budding entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs to say, like, what can I teach you that I've learned, and then what do you just need to learn on your own to figure out to kind of go wherever you want to go in your journey.
Yeah, that teaching bit sounds like it's kind of stuck with you for a lot of your career then.
Definitely. I love the teaching piece. Enabling other people to really unlock a lot of their potential is a driver. I do coaching for college freshmen. I generally take 1 to 2 college freshmen through the Coca-Cola Scholars Program that I'm a part of, even out of college. And every semester we take, they kind of divvy up some freshmen. And it's interesting to the mindset of a freshman college student, what they're focused on, but just trying to unlock some of their potential and try to kind of keep them within the guardrails. And, a lot of what I do is coaching anymore, which really is just kind of, I feel like I want to kind of help other people learn from what I've done and, again, unlock their potential and capabilities.
Yeah, I love that. And I was thinking about, I wanted to ask you, what is the, what's your role mainly consist of now, kind of at the CEO level? Unpack that a little bit. But maybe before we do that, I don't know, you see the comment that Armando had dropped in here, which I thought was interesting. He said, I can put it up on screen. Curious to get your thoughts here, Frank. Armando, you mentioned that you started as an SC. As you moved towards the CEO position, how did you reconcile the moving away from technology and moving closer towards people and business building? And oh man, this is so something that is top of mind for SCs. Frank, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's been 10 years, so I've kind of in some ways done all phases of the CEO role. And my strategy, I'm not kind of an ego forward kind of guy. I'm like, we're part of a team. I work with the team, which works really great when you're below 25 people and everyone's a generalist as you're starting out. Early days, my former partner and I would kind of go back and forth, and some deals he would play the sales role and I would be the sales engineer, and then we would flip flop and go back and forth, and then we would bring a client on and implement them. And we grew very quickly. So, we're an organization now. We have offices on 3 continents. We're about 110 employees, just under 200 customers globally. And so it becomes the shift of my role becomes interesting. But the one thing that I have done, and I think is really important for me, is I'm not that traditional CEO that's going to come in and I'm all about the business and the numbers and the business of running a business first. I'm very much a product person. And so, we've kind of, my COO's, he is amazing. We've balanced the workload between the 2 of us, and he's been with me almost 6 years now. And so we kind of balance this aspect of, like, each year, what do you want to work on? What do you want to focus on? What's important to the business? And last year we did an interesting exercise. So, he had taken over everything but product management and our tech teams, and I had kept those and kind of had him as directly reported me with everyone else underneath. And I had taken just the tech and product. And it worked really well because it allowed me to still work on product. We released a new product about 1.5 years ago called Sonari, and it allowed me to spend more time with product management and with dev where it was needed. And then this year we came into it and we're like, okay, that's we almost incubated a startup within the company within that product, which was really fun for me to do because, 10 years in, you're like, okay, a lot of it's scaling now. We're not doing broadly new things. We're doing a lot of more of the same. And that kind of, as a founder, can get boring, but I find ways to kind of mix it up. And so now we're back at the point where like, okay, we're out of startup mode with clients on that new product. Now we're going to look and kind of like bring it back. And now I'm kind of in more of a traditional CEO role, which is interesting how you flow back and forth. But I still, I meet regularly with my product and tech teams. That's the bulk of my week and the meetings of my week, which is interesting. And that's just really important to me. So I got to make it. I didn't come into the role. I was able to make the role what I wanted it to be by starting the business, which is interesting because there are CEOs, they're scaling CEOs. They like to just come in and they'll come in on a B round and they'll kind of say like, here's what we do. We're going to look at new regions. We're going to scale up sales and marketing. We're going to, basically focus really on numbers and ROI. And numbers are important, but the people part's really important to me too. And the product part, I got to be happy when I come into work as well. So it's a balance of like getting my tinker time, but also getting my customer facing and kind of people time too.
That's really cool. I like how you're able to kind of carve out the niche that is going to keep you happy, which is sort of that product and tech focused, as opposed to just bottom line numbers.
And there's no wrong answer either way. Like people are built one way or the other. I realized for me, if all I did was sat and managed the numbers all day, there's no joy for me.
Yeah.
Like at some point, like I need to see, to what we talked about earlier, the joy on someone's face when they use our products. And it's really interesting. If anyone's ever tried to name a company or name a product, it is a constructive, destructive, like soul wrenching process because you have to try and pick something unique that sounds good, that people can pronounce, that it just works. And it's crazy. But when you hear people talking about your product or your company name back in a very casual, like matter of fact way, it's amazing because you're sitting in a room sometimes naming things. We named the company Infinite Blue, and it's very common. Like I can say it now. When we first said it, and people are like, "What is an Infinite Blue?" Like, or what is a Sonari?
Yeah.
Sonari, our new product, is the word scenario without the first and last letter because it does dynamic scenario response.
Love that. That's awesome. Oh man. Yeah, it's so funny how the name is people fascinated over it. I mean, I did it with Alpha Pre-Sales, but oh man, there's been all this buzz, and frankly, I'm finding it to be quite annoying at this point. There's a lot of buzz in the pre-sales / solutions world right now, where they're trying to figure out a name for this so-called job that we have of pre-sales, sales engineer, solution architecture, solutions, whatever. Frank, do you have an opinion on this?
I laugh.
I do too.
I'm 42 and I laugh because I laugh. Even at this point, I feel old because I continuously, like, we call we have a position open now, which is, thank you. This is a great plug. I can plug our open solutions consultant position is what we call it. It's open right now that we're expanding the team.
SEs apply.
Yes. infiniteblue.com.
Yeah.
We would love to have somebody. We have the role posted. We call them solutions consultants because we've reformed our sales teams to be much more solutions focused. It's funny how everything runs in peaks and valleys and like in cycles, because I feel like 15 years ago, we're talking about solution selling and now we're back to solution selling. Which is great. We're very focused on outcomes for our customers. And so solution selling really meets that need. We're not the company that says, we want to sell you a product and it's like, oh, get a login and have a nice day. Like we're mapping the solutions, whether it's advisory, services piece, or our products, into what we can do for the customer on the other side. And the solutions consulting pieces fit well. So we call them solutions consultants today. I'm not even going to lie. Before we went on today, I walked into my head of HR's office and said, where are we at with the SE role? And she just laughed. She's like, oh, the SC, the solutions consultant. And I was like, yeah, the sales engineer. I think the title makes sense in a way that you can help people understand what it is you're going to do for them. And it gives you enough level of authority to be able to interact in a way that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so like our sales leaders, I'll call them, we've gone back and forth between account exec, and then now their titles are sales managers, because we think by giving them a title of manager, it gives them basically a higher elevation to be able to kind of interact. And we've given them more responsibility to be able to kind of negotiate terms and contracts.
Yeah.
So it really is interesting. That pre-sales role is so important. you want to be senior enough that people recognize your authority, but I've really found a lot of benefit, and I'm the guy in the trenches with them, so
Yeah.
that when they're working with the account exec, I can be more of their friend and their guide, and almost kind of be like a trusted advisor, even more than the salesperson, because everyone thinks salespeople just are there to sell them things.
Yeah.
But in an SE or an SC role, you're there to actually be a trusted person to guide them where they need to go.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the title's interesting. We're at solutions consultant just because it maps to our methodology at this point. But
Yeah.
if people are sales engineers next week or next year, the role's more important, I think, to me and what it
Yeah.
does than the title.
Yeah, I don't really dwell much on the name. It's just funny. There's a whole lot of buzz going on around it, and I'm like, tomato, tomato. It's not, just help the customer. That's your job.
Trusted advisor. You want to be a trusted advisor. You want to be a trusted technology advisor, that you can unlock again the potential for a customer to be able to take your products and be better off with them than they were
Yeah.
before.
So on the SC front, I'm curious to get your take, and if folks on the chat have some thoughts on this, drop it in there too. Um, Frank, what are your pre-sales or sales engineering pet peeves?
Uh, you know, we just met. We do a lot of trade shows, spring and fall. We do most of our demos anymore. Probably 95% are Teams or Zoom,
Mm-hmm.
and so we're not on site as much anymore. But it doesn't matter. When we're going to have people present back before we go on our trade show circuit for the spring. Every year we have people demo back to us. PowerPoint leading up to the actual product demonstration. All our products are SaaS, so it's a web browser they use to demo them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, look, having a TV background, I am a make everything look like a very polished production person. So when I do this, a demo, I will have my PowerPoint up. I'll very quickly Alt or Command Tab over to the application. So it's a very quick transition and it's there. You're not seeing me go around my desktop. You're not seeing other apps. You're not seeing my email pop up. My computer's on Do Not Disturb. My phone's off. Things popping up on top of it that make it not look like a polished production drive me absolutely insane. So when your alerts for your Teams or your Slack messages pop up, or I hear that kind of tongue click sound of Slack going off while we're doing a presentation, drives me insane. The other thing that's just really simple, hide your toolbar on your browser, because I don't necessarily need to see your next vacation you're planning or your link to your HR portal or whatever it is. Just hide that. Like, I want the focus to be, I don't want you thinking about the outlines of what I'm showing you. I want you to only see and be focused on my voice and what my company does and what my product's doing, as we go forward. And it's really hard. Sometimes there's a lot of room for distraction. We are not in a culture today that welcomes focus. And therefore, if I can give a distraction-free presentation to somebody, I think it really helps with having an active conversation and getting farther through the process.
Yeah. Oh man, it's so annoying to see that stuff. Or yeah, I had a coworker that did I think they called it like the distraction-free presentation, and it was exactly what you just mentioned. It was do not disturb, hide toolbar, get rid of all tabs, mute notifications. Um, have you had any bad experiences with that?
Never. No. I have a great story. So I was a PC guy up until we started the company. And when I went full time, I'll never forget my daughter was born January of 2014. And while my wife was still in the hospital, my first Mac I ever bought came via FedEx. And I remember picking it up. I'm tired. We're back and forth to the hospital. We bring the baby home and getting on my first demo the following week. So excited I have, back then we used GoToMeeting. We're on the meeting. I'm sharing my whole desktop because I didn't know any better at the time. And we're doing the demo. And it was one where my partner was like, okay, I'm the sales lead. You're the sales engineer. I'm like, okay, doing the demo, clicking through. We're in the product. I'm doing the demo. And he basically sends me a text that says, this guy has no idea what he's talking about our prospect we're on with. I didn't turn anything off on my Mac. It just popped up in the middle of my screen share on my screen up in the top right. And if you've used Mac for the last 10 years, it wasn't really obvious. Like there was no little X that you could click on. You had to actually like hover over it and click and kind of throw it to the side to get rid of that notification. I took my mouse up and hovered over it because I was freaking out about it showing on the screen. And by hovering over it made it last longer because the UI thought that I wanted to pay attention to it instead of having it just fade away. So I actually drove attention to it and caused it to last longer. And then he sent like a second message, like, I can see your message. And that pops up over top of it, right? And so I literally went into go to meeting and I hit the stop share button. And, you know, it was one of those, oh, I'm really sorry. My internet's really funky right now. Like, I don't know what's going on. Just give me a second. And then, you know, he's like, you have to stop doing that. So then I just opened it up and just shared the browser because at that point we're past the PowerPoint. I don't need the whole desktop. But that was pretty embarrassing. So now, you know, luckily Mac persists profiles when you go from computer to computer, but that's always one of the first things I check. Again, why I put it on do not disturb when I'm doing a screen share, because I don't want anything popping up that good, bad, or indifferent.
Oh my
So
God.
that was embarrassing just a little bit. They did sign on as a customer. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that, but you know, oops.
Oh man, we've all had it, right? The just super awkward situation there in front of the clients. Abort, abort.
Yeah. I just look, part of that, I think I would probably handle it differently today. Anything embarrassing that happens, like we're humans. And so I would run toward it today and acknowledge it and just kind of say, hey, I'm really sorry. I have no idea what this is. Like, let me get rid of it and we'll move forward. I think 10 years ago, we're just trying to get established, trying to get, you know, credibility for who we are and using our credibility in the space prior, but the company had no brand recognition. And so everything in my mind needed to be perfect. We wanted everything perfect. I also, by the way, another pet peeve, misspellings in a UI or on a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Please just read through it. If you're going to make something, you know, entrepreneurs, we make a lot of things just in time. Read through it and double scan it and give it to someone else to look at before you show it. Just make sure it's not misspelled, please.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, I'm so guilty of that. I mean, heck, I did it with your name earlier. We talked about that, right? Frank with no C before the or in between the S and the H. But yeah, it's really funny because I don't have that I, and I'll do a double check and sometimes I'll miss things. So I actually had a coworker that was way more detail oriented than me, my CSM. I'd be like, hey, can you proofread this for me? He's like, yeah, this is terrible. Like clean it up completely for me.
Yeah, look, and I laugh. And then the flip side. So my head of marketing, I've known her for 15 years now. She's been with us since the beginning, 10 years in some capacity, part-time and then full-time. She's a great balance. But even now today, like we pay a proofreader a couple $100 a month that we send stuff to just to like read through it and edit it. Like at some point you're like, okay, it's not worth the time to do. But yeah, it's just weird. It's amazing how when you're pitching a Fortune, you know, a lot of our customers are Fortune 500. We have 4 of the Fortune 10. You don't want to walk into one of the Fortune 10 companies and have your name spelled wrong or your product name spelled wrong or anything. Like it just got to look tight and got to look prepared. That's the biggest thing for me.
No, you're at an elite level there. Everything's got to be buttoned up and good. Well, cool. Quick check. So for folks that are just joining up, I've got Frank Shultz, CEO of Infinite Blue. Frank used to be an SE and also product manager. And so if you've got questions for him that you want to ask for someone who's been through the ranks and now founded a company, drop them in the chat. We'll ask Frank that stuff. Frank, you mentioned a little bit about this where you said now if there's something awkward, you'll probably call it out in a meeting.
Yeah.
But a question I love asking leaders is, what advice would you give your younger self? And I'd say more specifically, your younger SE self. What advice would you give your younger SE self now that you know after getting a few more years on you?
Hindsight is 20/20, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think about my parents and grandparents giving advice when I was really young, and you never want to take their advice. You want to, prove it to yourself. It's that whole hand in the fire kind of thing. I got to feel the heat, so I know never to put my hand back there. Listening to others, and I think taking advice is really important. And I had it beat out of me in, like, not physically, like literally, like, but by training at Stroll, where I had probably one of the best training programs to be an SE there, by Amy, that now works for Infinite Blue, and the team there, where you would go into an hour presentation and you would get 40 minutes in and you would maybe forget something or mess it up, and it would be like, stop, start over. Right. And so it's just that rigor that helps. But if you focus more in the beginning, you got to stumble to get better. But in the same regard, like, it's just this rigor that you go through. And that really worked well for me, because I had done a lot of things that just came easy to me in life before. And so for me, learning and polishing that trade was really helpful. I think listening is something that's come to me farther in my life. I worked at the Sharper Image, for those that remember the brand and the store in King of Prussia, in high school and college. And I learned a really important lesson there that I even wish I knew earlier on. Someone was trying to sell someone, I forget, call it like $1,000 stereo that they probably didn't need. And I love tech. So I walked up thinking I could be helpful and tell them some features of what that product did and something of the stereo. And the person was like, thank you, that's great, and walked away. And, the sales rep got really angry at me, and he's like, look, don't speak unless you know the game. Don't speak unless you know kind of what angle we're trying to play and what we're trying to do. And the other important lesson I've learned is, when you have someone where you need them to be from a sales cycle perspective, stop, just stop and listen. And that's really hard for a lot of people. It's really difficult, I think, for a lot of people when there's dead air time. They want to fill it. And some of the most significant conversations that I've had with prospects or customers have been the 15 or 10 minutes walking into the room or before we leave. And if I'm not present, I don't listen there, I'm going to miss it. And so I think listening is really important. But we do. I always think in every engagement, I think this is something I've learned over time. Again, I probably wish I knew when I was younger. Every engagement you go into with a prospect or an upsell opportunity with a customer, think about what you want the outcome to be. When you believe there's a high probability of achieving that outcome, that's the time to end the meeting. That's the time to say, or talk about next steps. It's really difficult for a lot of people to do that. So if you have an hour meeting blocked and you want to show someone the product and you go through it and you're getting really affirming communications and you're getting head nods and you're getting, well, we're going to do a presentation to, C-suite afterwards, stop and say, okay, when do you want to do the presentation for the C-suite? When do we do that? How can I help enable you? And I love this, be confident enough in the comfort in the silence, confident enough to be comfortable in the silence. Thank you, Armando. Silence and listening are super powerful tools that I wish I had unlocked earlier in my career. It will give you so much. People want to talk and people want to share things when they trust you. And sometimes you just have to listen.
Yeah. Love that. There's been so many times when I've just felt like I needed to continue talking and, there's more demo to show. Customers sold, they're sold, Yeah,
wait, I want to show you, but I didn't show you all the features. Like, right, this is an early career thing that I've fallen into the trap for, and I see others do this, but I haven't shown you all the features, right? Because we're sales engineers, a lot of times are aligned to show you how the product works and to make it dance. I always say that, like, I can make it dance. I can make it do whatever dance we need to at the end. But if you understand the outcome of the meeting you're trying to have, so our sales cycle typically is we may do a one-on-one demo that leads to a group demo that may or may not lead to a trial. If I'm in a one-on-one demo because someone needs to validate it to bring the rest of their team in, once I feel like they've validated it, I'm going to stop and ask for how do we set up the group demo. And when we get in the group demo, it's either I need acceptance or I need their affirmation that we're going to go to a trial. Once I get that, kind of going to stop and I'm going to use the rest of the time on the call to say, okay, like, how do we get to that next step? sometimes it's hard for like a sales engineer because the account exec is like, we booked an hour, go speak for an hour.
Yeah.
I think building a good relationship, I've had AEs that I've worked amazingly with, and it's like they're my left hand and I'm the right hand, and we just go forward. And then there's some that no matter what would happen, it's like we're speaking different languages, and it doesn't matter. It's like, this is your job. You go in, you do you do this presentation for the bulk of the hour after I stop talking, and then we stop, and I'll follow up with the prospect.
The relationship is such a huge dynamic here. Now I'm curious, what was your best relationship and what was your worst relationship? I'm more curious about the worst.
Yeah, the best is easy, right? The best is doing a pre-sales call either with the AE or getting the notes from them after the pre-sales call to understand the important levers we're trying to pull and the outcomes we're trying to map to. Those that do it are very consistent, and it's really easy because it's going to be there. You can pull the notes up a little bit ahead of time and figure out like, well, what's the deal here? What am I trying to get to, and who's on the call? Give me a profile of who's showing up, whether it's a LinkedIn link for them. A lot of times, we use HubSpot. HubSpot can help with a lot of this because we'll have everyone kind of tagged into the call. But tell me why we're doing the demo. The destructive ones, I had a very contentious relationship with a sales manager. This has been probably 10 or 12 years ago, but it got to the point where it was like, well, we would be on demos and we would do this traditional, they would do the PowerPoint and then it would turn over to me and I would do the software piece. And a lot of the demos started to get to, well, I'm going to be in my car, so can you do the PowerPoint and I'll just talk through it? And they're literally on like their car phone, like their speakerphone in their car, Bluetooth, doing the demo, not really seeing the slides while they're driving. And then it became this like, well, can you just schedule this demo for me? And I'm like, well, am I the lead relationship person on the account? Because like I don't think it's my job to schedule the demo. It should come from you, because if they have questions or follow on, your name's the meeting organizer. They're going to come back to you, because so often people will just respond to the meeting invite and ask questions. No, your job is to set up the meetings. And I'm like, well, okay. Well, I remember having a really uncomfortable conversation and saying something to the effect of, you get 10% and I get 2% commission on this. And if I'm doing more of your job, we're going to need to slide the scale a little different in the other direction. Yes. And it not being taken very well on the other side. So like, I think understanding the boundaries, and every org's a little different, but understanding the boundaries of the roles are so important, so you can understand what the expectations are when you meet someone else. But I've been in companies where I've supported, kind of a rolling lead of 20 or 30 account execs. And I've been at companies where it's a 1-to-1 pair. Yeah. Who you like to work with, and who's kind of going to sit back and eat pop. I literally had one sales manager that we did a 2-day proof of concept on site. I'm up front sweating. The product's not working where we need it to be at a former company. And I look in the back and he's leaning against the wall eating popcorn. I can't even make it up. Eating a bag of popcorn. And I lost it. I'm like, and afterwards it's like, okay, like, here's what I need from you. Like, to be successful and for us to go forward, here's what I need from you. It's hard. It's a hard conversation to have, because we're kind of sometimes at the bottom of the rung, right? Like it's you're a peer sales, but you're also not. And it just depends on how that role's positioned. So it's interesting to me, for those, in chat, is how are you positioned in your company? Do you feel like you're a peer of your AE, or do you work for your AE? Because that can change the relationship in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah, that one's tough. I'm curious to get folks' thought on that. I've always seen it as a partnership. A good friend of mine, Sarah Jones, had mentioned that I think she said pre-sales and sales are like siblings.
Yep.
Where
that's when it works best, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't work best when it's, contentious or there's silos up. Like I think of, as an SC, I think of myself as a resource that's available when I can come in during the sales process at the right cycle for what needs to happen. And then there's times legal is going to come in, and there are times that your CX or your CS team is going to come in to maybe scope out an implementation. And so there's all points in the life cycle that these resources are going to be important, but how much of the whole process are the SEs carrying? It's going to depend company to company.
Yeah.
I don't know the right answers either. It just depends.
Yeah. It's a tough one, and it's I definitely see it at different cultures within different companies where it's the SE is just a resource that I'm going to plug in when I need to versus they're truly a partner. Um, nice. So a lot of folks that listen in on this are either in pre-sales individual contributor roles or in management roles. I'm curious for the folks that are like thinking about the switch. Can you talk about the differences between sort of having that individual contributor role where you're just, your job is to advance a deal versus managing people? And I mean, heck, you got a whole lot of people now to manage as CEO. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think it is different. When you're an IC, it's very much, I want to know what my goals are. I want to align them to the company goals, and I want to make sure I can achieve those. So, we have, this year, we have 4 top line goals across the company. Much like you would imagine, there's a revenue goal, there's an expense goal, there's an employee goal, and there's kind of a growth goal separate from revenue. And how does what I do align to that? So how am I helping the company move the needle? So as an IC, I'm always thinking, about that and how to enable our employees to map that. When you become a manager, it's really interesting, and not everyone is built to be a manager, and that's okay.
Hmm.
That actually is okay. Part of that, we figured out the life cycle. There are people in the last 10 years that are extremely valuable to the organization and have been amazing for what we do. They just are always, what do I need to do first before I do something for my team? I find the manager, and I will separate management from leadership too, because I think they're 2 different concepts. I don't think they're the same thing, and I'll come back to that in a second. A manager and the manager mindset is, how do I unblock the path for all of those that report to me or that are accountable to me so that they can achieve what they've told me they can achieve? And it's a different construct. It's really thinking about, like, my team knows the first thing I tell all of my direct reports, and they'll all tell you that I tell them this: no surprises. Like, I hate being surprised. So if you think something's going to blow up in some way, tell me as early as possible. And then what they'll do is they'll say, no action needed, but I want you to know this. Is literally, like, I had a meeting earlier this morning. And that's very common phrasing that I use with people, because it's no action needed, but I want you to know this. And I'm like, okay. And my usual answer is, well, do you want me to check in with you on this like next week? Because I try to do one-on-ones every week or every other week. And it'll be like no or yes. And so I have literally like a task list for every person that directly reports to me, and I'll put items to track in that. And it's literally just an Apple reminders list for everybody. I'll put it in there, and then I know next week when we come back, okay, here's the things we want to talk through.
Hmm.
That's the manager role. Now, when you look at leadership versus management, we have amazing leaders in our company, and not all of them are managers. I also have managers that maybe are not the leaders, but they're really good at making sure that their team does what they need to do.
Hmm.
And so there is a definite aspect. It's really easy as you're starting a company to confuse leaders with managers. It's really easy. Like, this person's really good at this role. It's kind of like the sales role. I always say, just because you're a great salesperson doesn't mean you want to be, or you're going to be a good manager. It's a different mindset.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of, I think, history and documentation on people that are good at sales being put in a management role and just floundering and failing. It's just not how they're wired. So, they can be a leader, but maybe they're not a manager.
Hmm. Yeah, that's oh man. Chris Mabry was on last week, maybe the week before, and he had said that leadership's really unique in that you have to kind of move forward and make decisions without a lot of information necessarily, and just be comfortable with that. But I like that distinction on management. It's just, kind of unblocking folks. That
And
was
making sure
interesting
they go in
though.
the right and making sure they go in the right direction, right?
Yeah.
Because I think the other aspect of management is, imagine everyone in your team is on one side of a lake, and you need to get to the other side. And so you tell everybody, we're going to go to the other side of the lake. That's all you tell them, right? 2 people are going to walk around. 2 people are going to swim freestyle. 3 are going to go build a raft. and the other one's going to go try to buy a raft from somebody else because they don't know how to build a raft, right? And
Yeah.
they're all going to end up at different points on the other side. And so it's unlocking their ability to go, but also making sure that they understand what the goal is that we're working toward. And so what point on the other side do we have to be at? Because if you do that exercise and someone says, well, how long do I have? And where do you want me at the end? That's good management. That's a team that works well together.
That's so good. Now I'm curious. What would folks do? Would you walk around? Would you swim? Would you build the raft? Or would you buy the raft? I would definitely build the raft because I'm an engineer, but
yeah, me too. I probably would look for things to kind of use and float along to the other side. We've talked, my leadership team, we've talked about that analogy. And the other analogy I love to use, if you want to use it with your teams, is you're going on a hiking trip and everyone's got to carry something. And so you got to all go together, because if somebody forgets the water or somebody can't carry the tent, you're going to get to your campsite and the whole team is now let down because there's no water or there's no shelter. So
yeah, I like the hiking one. That's good. It is a joint thing. Everybody's kind of got to go together. You said something interesting around it. How did you say it? I'm not, no action needed, but I want you to know about this. Is that how you said it?
Yes.
I love that. I'm going to start using that, because there are things where I just need to let someone know, but I don't need them to take action on it.
Well, that's probably learned from some team members on my team, because they've told me things and I've taken action and I didn't really need to. It's like, well, this is a problem. I'm like, yeah, this is really a problem. What are we doing about it? Okay, I'll call them up. I'll send them a Teams message. We're going to tell them they needed it. And they're like, no. Don't make a mess. I'm just telling you it's okay. I'm like, okay, I trust you. You'll let me know. Because my leadership style is definitely not one of micromanagement. It is we come together, we define what we need to do, we meet regularly, and you're going to tell me when you get blocked, or I'm going to see it in like a lack of progress of where we need to go. But I'm not micromanaging to the point, like, I have to trust and respect my team enough to come back to me when they need help or when they get stuck. And what really kind of rubs me the wrong way as a CEO and as a manager is we get together, we commit date and goal. Those are the two kind of variables we have. And the date goes by and the goal's not met, and we haven't renegotiated a time or a reason why or whatever it is. Then accountability has to kick in. So I have to say, okay, Rue, you told me by Friday you would have this done. It's Monday the next week now. Like, what's going on? And it's like, hey, I just really need to know. Again, the no surprises kind of subtext. Tell me Friday morning then, or tell me Thursday that you don't think you're going to get to it, and I'm totally cool if you need the weekend or you need next week to go through it. But it's that kind of like come together, commit, execute, and you have to do some refinements. But that way, you're kind of continuously getting to where you need to get to.
Yeah, I like that no surprises. I learned that from a really good friend of mine, where it's just let people know and be aware of it, especially if the date doesn't move. That's no good.
Yeah.
What else you got going on? I think you said you got a couple of trade shows coming up. Yeah,
we do. So we typically have kind of a spring and a fall trade show season, which is really interesting. We do some small industry shows that are it could be 300 to 800 people. And then last year we started picking up some bigger shows that are one's 12,000 people. One is, a couple thousand, 4,000, I believe. Really interesting for how we take the team and we show up to that. And how do we, again, I always think about, okay, we're here. Someone walks up to our booth. What's the goal when they leave? And what are we trying to do? And get their contact information, show them a product demo. And I laugh because the goal is to leave them wanting more. We're not going to sign a deal. We do enterprise deals. So, I'm not going to take a credit card or have someone go sign up on our website. We have to go through a contracting process, but I want them wanting more. And so we're getting lined up for those. And so I love them. We typically have an expo center. We do trade show booths, and we do some speaking engagements. Sometimes I keynote, sometimes I'm on a panel. Sometimes my team members are doing workshops, and it's just really fun. It brings a lot of camaraderie together in the company,
Mm-hmm.
which I love. And last year we were setting up a show. This is something I believe, like, look, as a sales engineer, I set the booth up with my team. As a CEO, I set the booth up with my team. I'm not the kind of guy that goes and pays somebody to do it. Like, I'm on the floor in a t-shirt and jeans or whatever, or shorts, and we're putting the bars together and mounting the TVs and doing whatever. 2 shows last year, I had people walk up to my team and myself and say, "You guys really like working together. This is really cool." Just setting a booth up.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a cool culture, and that's been really important to me to build, and to go forward there.
Yeah, that's awesome. It definitely feels like everybody's truly a team for sure. Is that the disaster recovery journal and continuity insights
Yes,
one?
yeah.
Okay.
So we have there's a Disaster Recovery Institute (DRI) that's coming up in a couple weeks in New Orleans. There is a Disaster Recovery Journal in March conference in Orlando, and then we have Continuity Insights that's in Charlotte in April, and then we do our user group every year, which this year is the first weekend in June. That I love. Like, it's just, again, having a media background, it is. What is my head of marketing, Courtney? Again, worked with her for the whole 10 years here, and she'll say it's like a 3-day wedding when you're trying to plan like a user group.
Yeah.
Which is really cool, and people love like the experience of our community building, but different from showing up to someone else's show where you're maybe just speaking and exhibiting. Like,
Yeah.
you're responsible for everything in that user group.
No, there's so much that goes into that. It's always like the sales kickoffs are always insane, and then the community or like user, the company world events, if you will, are nuts.
Definitely.
That's cool. All right, and then you've got I think you've got a webinar coming up too, yeah?
I do. So we partner with a company called Alert Media, and part of what we do every year is we do a kind of prediction, kind of a summary of what happened last year and a prediction of what's going to happen and what companies need to look out for from a risk perspective in the coming year. And that's our Global Enterprise Resilience Report. Our partner, Alert Media, does a lot of threat intelligence. So they'll source news events and weather events and threats. They summarized everything that they saw in 23. And so I'm actually meeting with someone and co-presenting in a week and a half on that, which is really cool. So if you want to know what you need to worry about for next year,
Yeah.
join us, and it's really fun. She is great. Her name's Sarah Prattley. She used to run the CNN, part of CNN's news division, but make a long story short, we literally were both at Syracuse at the same time and never knew each other, and met at a trade show a couple of years ago. So it is a small world.
That's crazy. Yeah, because the BCDR type industries, a lot of people don't know about them, and that's a good thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So these guys, I mean, I don't know if you have any funny analogies on that, but I feel like, Frank, the goal of all these programs is you don't want to be known in this industry.
No. Look, I laugh. I mean, people don't really think about the aggregate of everything that we're dealing with today, but there were 28 over $1 billion natural weather events in the United States last year, which is the record-breaking year in recorded history of how many billion-dollar natural weather events occurred. It is really crazy, but my favorite slides to use right now, and you can go and do this yourself without the visual. If you go and you Google population density map, and there's a really cool, I think it's NASA did one that has areas that are densely populated kind of in a lighter color, a white color, and everything else is kind of darker. And then you go and you want to go to FEMA site and you want to search National Risk Index. So FEMA NRI, National Risk Index. And you compare population density with, at least for the United States, the highest risk areas for natural weather events. They are grossly overlapped. Like the riskiest areas in the U.S. are South Florida, Houston, Texas area, the coast in California. When you look at the maps, part of kind of New York, New Jersey, when you look at those maps, that's obviously where we have some of the densest concentration of people living. Therefore, everything costs more. Things are going to cause more impact, and these weather events aren't stopping. So,
Yeah.
I love part of what I get to do. I get to geek out on like threat intelligence stuff too, and really cool trip. We do some work with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, and I got to tour the National Hurricane Center a couple weeks ago, which was just like a geek out event for me. So
Yeah.
super cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Being in a role like that where you can kind of get to these sweet little events and geek out and that kind of thing.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, I was an SE. I got a tour of a plant that did built like GMOs and stuff, but I felt like I was back in a science lab where they're like taking me around all over the place. It was like a clean center pharmaceutical type room. I'm like, this is so cool. I tell people, they're like, yeah, that's pretty dorky.
There was I was doing training at one site, and this is years ago, and I remember they had a locker. You couldn't take a phone with a camera in, and you couldn't even take anything edible because, again, to your point, it was a production site. So if you had chewed or mints or whatever, you had to leave it in a locker. You couldn't bring it in.
It's nuts.
Like, okay, but yeah.
Cool. Well, we're getting up on time, so I definitely want to save time for the alpha pre-sales question, which is a question I ask all of my guests. And this question is, I'm going to first ask you a question. I want you to think of a person in your head. And then I'm going to ask you a follow-up question. So just step one is just let me know when you've got an idea or a person in your head. Okay. So you ready for it?
Yes.
Okay. So I want you to think of the best sales engineer that you have ever worked with. I want you to get them up in your head and let me know when you got them. You can't pick yourself.
I wouldn't. Okay.
All right. What did that person do that was unique or special?
So it ironically is going to be Amy, who works for me, and who led the team of sales engineers at Shultz Systems, and that first role I got hired into. It's amazing, right? Like, I think she presents technology in a way that you're not processing using technology. You're talking more about the benefits and the outcomes of what it can do for you. And I think we can all go and feature dump. We can all go and want to show every button and every click and all the cool stuff. But she really tailors what she does to what the customer is doing and what they're asking for. And it's not scripted. We all have scripts we write, and we have flows of PowerPoints and the way things go. And, it can be disruptive when you don't know the content. If everyone hates the demo where you do it and there's no interaction, but then it's also annoying on the other side where you get to that demo and people are interrupting you every 30 seconds.
Yeah.
She, in a way, can take that every 30-second disruption and make it true engagement in a way that actually helps the prospect get to the point where they're comfortable.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing. But look, it comes back that key thing that I said I wish I knew earlier, which was listening and using kind of dead air time.
Yeah.
Super important.
Yeah.
I think we could all just, if you pause and just take a little bit of a pause. I'm a big fan of, I show you something and I stop and say, does that resonate? And do you have any questions?
Yeah.
But Amy does that really well. Most of what I've learned for presenting is from Amy.
That's awesome.
And if she watches this or she's on live now, she'll probably yell at me for saying that, because she's very modest as well.
Is she, did you say she's leading the team or managing the team?
She is, yeah. She's our lead sales engineer. So
all right. So for folks that are listening, you've got an open job rec and you've got the best sales engineering leader that Frank has ever met in the same box. So get after it. Get those applications in.
Please.
Good stuff. Well, yeah, I want to wrap here, Frank. Any if folks want to get more Frank, what's the best way to do that? Is it these trade shows, LinkedIn? You tell us.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. I kind of dropped all social except for LinkedIn anymore, just because of some of the noise and being able to talk to the people that I think I can help. So LinkedIn, I'm very active on LinkedIn. I do unfortunately get a lot of sales pitches. This is the other side of LinkedIn. So you can't directly connect with me, but if you follow me, I'll connect back with you. Just drop me a quick line in there, and that or infiniteblue.com. And I'm easily accessible on there as well. frank.schultz@infiniteblue.com. I'm happy to set up time with anybody. If you're looking at building a company, becoming an entrepreneur, happy to have a conversation with you if there are pre-sales questions you have, or if you have something you're like, this works really well for me. Like, what do you think? Like, I love that too. Like, I'd be happy to engage in that. But yeah, definitely would love to engage with anyone that I could be helpful to, or that they think could help me.
Yeah, you had said something when we had chatted briefly about, for folks that are starting a company, some things to think about. And actually, yeah, if you don't mind repeating that, it was something along the lines of when it's thinking about taking funding and that kind of thing. Um, that was just a
Yeah.
great lesson that I feel like was really applicable.
Yeah, so funding was really interesting to try to get in the last year, because there wasn't a lot of it. Everyone pulled back. When you're starting a company, I think you have to think intentionally about what levels you want to get to, almost a little bit of a plateau, and how much money you need to get there. Because when you start a business, and no matter what you're doing, you're taking your own money or someone else's money, you're always thinking of how much runway do I have before I'm out of money, and what do I need to do to kind of get more money here so I can go farther. And so you have to think really hard about how far and how fast you want to go, and when you're willing to take capital and sell part of your company to get either faster or farther. It's really important to think about that.
Yeah, know where you're at and don't take money for the sake of it, but really know how fast and far you want to be moving.
Definitely.
It's great. All right. You heard it here, folks. If you need Frank, infiniteblue.com, hit them up on LinkedIn. They are open position at Infinite Blue for sales engineer here, or solution consultant.
Yep.
Yeah. Frank, thank you so much for the time. This has been great. I have a whole lot more I want to ask you about founder and entrepreneurship and that kind of thing, but we'll keep it to the SEs here. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Will. It's been great talking, and happy to follow on the conversation with anybody that has some follow-up questions. But thank you. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. Take care.
Thanks. You too.